Let me start today's video with a question. How long is a typical media scandal? How long does it last? Lately, it feels like the collective attention span for the entire world has been shrinking rapidly. But what if I said that we actually have an abundance of well-constructed data put together by Axios, Google Trends, and Schema, delving into the reality behind social attention span, media cycles, and public consciousness? Well, fortunately, we do have such data, and it turns out that the average media cycle surrounding politics, social issues, or even catastrophes takes right around 7 days to unfold, on average. Of course, there are always exceptions to this average, but recognizing the fact that we live in the age of readily accessible information, the time between when stories are born, reach peak media frenzy, and subsequently die off completely is, generally speaking, plus or minus, about 7 days. That is an incredibly short amount of time. Each individual day can sometimes feel like an eternity on its own, but the idea that most major media cycles begin and definitively conclude within 7 days is kind of mind-blowing. I could go down the rabbit hole of why I think that is, but far more importantly, on rare occasion, once in a while, a story takes hold which refuses to die, subsequently propagating itself further in the media for weeks, months, or even years. Jeffrey Epstein, with the implied corruption across political elites, figureheads, and celebrities all around the world, as much as some people wish this wouldn't be true, Jeffrey Epstein is one of those exceptions, and if the pressure continues, it also may become a focal point in United States history because the current government administration is floundering. I've already done multiple videos about this, which I'll link down below in the description, but for the sake of time, this is an update to the situation, not a comprehensive overview. All right, let's get started. Over the past 6 or so months, the story has systematically grown. What started as a simple media stunt, revealing binders that actually contained nothing, has become the sort of Achilles heel for an entire political movement. What could very well have remained unspoken is now at the forefront of practically every single news outlet, and as the pressure continues to build, the answers being given, as well as the optics surrounding them, are progressively deteriorating. First, it was performative, like a magician's force, showing nothing real, yet trying to capture attention while doing so. But then it quickly became about distance. The entire subject is now politically toxic, and as that toxicity grows, people like Ghislaine Maxwell are attempting to capitalize on it. I want to be clear about something right now. Ghislaine Maxwell is a convicted criminal. Not only did she facilitate horrible crimes, she participated in them. She was charged with perjury, 2 separate counts, and served as a scout for one of the most disgusting trafficking enterprises in modern history, which operated at scale all around the world. She is the lowest of the low, undeserving of mercy, relief, or pardon, and yet mercy, relief, and pardon are exactly what she's getting. Presumably capitalizing on the negative media cycle which is bombarding President Trump right now over his extremely transparent cover-up regarding personal connections to Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell's legal team reached out to the Department of Justice, after which there were multiple interviews, limited immunity was granted, and now, predictably, she is clearing President Trump, stating that he never did anything in her presence which would be cause for concern. This is perhaps the most obvious outcome that we could possibly expect because Ghislaine Maxwell has every single incentive to lie about it. Trump is capable of issuing a pardon, obviously, so implicating him further in a scandal which his administration is desperate to evade, so much so that they're reportedly having secret strategy meetings about it, is entirely out of the question for her. But going even further, even without a pardon, her life, and her prison sentence especially, can be made exponentially easier, which it has been already. Yeah, Ghislaine Maxwell has now been transferred to FPC Bryan, which is a minimum security facility in Houston, Texas, known as, quote, one of the cushiest federal detention facilities in the country, end quote. Interestingly, this transfer shouldn't have been possible because sex offenders don't qualify, and yet there she is on the inmate registry, which is the result of a special set of circumstances and waiver forms where she was transferred to this minimum security facility directly after speaking with the DOJ. Trump notably described this as not a very uncommon thing, and yet the truth is it is extremely uncommon, practically unprecedented. Reported by NBC, retired federal prison special investigator Vito Maraviglia said, quote, in his 27 years on the job, he doesn't recall an instance in which a sex offender was moved to a prison camp, end quote. This is all widely reported now. You can see this in a multitude of YouTube videos and media stories all over the place. Like we said at the onset, the cycle for this, for the Epstein cover-up, is refusing to die week after week. But what about something that isn't as widely known? Ghislaine Maxwell is obviously incentivized to lie for Trump's benefit, But something a lot of people may not be aware of is that there's conflicting reports out there about what she said regarding Trump in the past. Now, going on a bit of a tangent with this, there's a couple of different options here on how to showcase what I'm talking about. I could put this article from 2021 up on screen from the Daily Mail and draw quotes from that, but I want to take a minute here and talk about something that kind of bothers me. When it comes to the Epstein stuff in particular, I sometimes see comments about how I uncritically parrot what media sources publish. This almost exclusively comes from the conservative side of the aisle, who lament the fact that I would ever trust a media institution blindly, and often announce that they're unsubscribing as a result when they do make these comments. Rather than calling these people idiots, even though they typically are, I want to take this opportunity to not only showcase steps that I take when putting together a video like this, but steps that anyone can take to check the authenticity of something instead of simply crying about fake news all the time, okay? This Daily Mail article has an interesting premise. A former producer for CBS 60 Minutes, Ira Rosen, allegedly wrote a memoir, and in that memoir, he allegedly claims that Ghislaine Maxwell confirmed to him that there are incriminating tapes of Donald Trump made by Jeffrey Epstein. That's the gist of it, but how do we check this for ourselves? Obviously, I'm not expecting everyone who wants to validate a single news article to read an entire book or buy a bunch of things. So how do we check this for ourselves, I should clarify, quickly and without cost? This is how. The book that they're referencing is called Ticking Clock, and if you do a little bit of searching, you can find that the audio version is on a website called audiobooks.com. Signing up for a free trial on the website gives you 1 free download credit, which I did, using it then to obtain a copy of Ticking Clock. That's already enough to check this for yourself, by the way, but I also don't expect people to listen to 11 full hours of audio because nobody has time for that. If you play the book, which opens a separate stream, inspect the page, go to Network, you can get the MP3 request link, and if you plug that link itself into a separate tab, you get the actual file, which can then be downloaded. After that, you split the recording into 2 sections because the maximum for typical transcript generators is about 6 hours, and then pick one of the many options available, generating a low quality but helpfully time-stamped version of the audio as a transcript. After that, keyword search Trump, Epstein, and Maxwell, which gives you the times, followed by trimming those segments down in some sort of editing program. You can also just go back to the audiobook and click those particular portions from the timestamp, but start to finish, this entire process can be done in like 10 to 15 minutes. When reading typical news articles, at least the ones that don't rely on confidential sources, that's a whole lot trickier. But when reading typical news sources, you can often fact check what they say for free, reading, or in this case hearing, the content that they reference in minutes. All of this is to say that instead of just showing this Daily Mail article on screen, here's the quote itself from Ira Rosen's memoir.
As more sordid details began to emerge about Epstein and Maxwell's role in pimping for him, I called her a few months before the 2016 presidential election and asked if she would join me for a drink. She immediately said yes. She thought I was following up on her previous seduction offer, but I was more interested in what she knew about Trump's visits to Epstein's Palm Beach house and any interactions he may have had with underage women. One lawsuit filed that year named Trump as the person who allegedly had sex with a 13-year-old at Epstein's place, a suit that was dismissed.
Pause. That's wrong. The suit was technically dismissed, but it was more so withdrawn or voluntarily dismissed after the accuser received numerous threats to their person. I think that's a distinction that should be made. I've read that lawsuit, by the way. It's this one. I'll put the link down below. Continuing.
But because I had a sense of who Epstein was, I surmised that he had wired his homes with security cameras that videotaped his guests having sex, a fact later confirmed by one of the underage women he seduced. So I played a hunch. I want the tapes, I told Maxwell, at a table at the Regency bar. I know he was videotaping everyone, and I want the tapes of Trump with the girls. She didn't deny the existence of the tapes, but said, I don't know where they are. Ask Epstein. The fate of the country is at stake. Trump could be elected president. And how would you feel if those tapes emerged after he was in office? She gave me a stern look and pointed a finger in my face. I am the daughter of a press baron. I know the way you people think. If you do one side, you must do the other. If you get tapes on Trump, You have to do Clinton, she said. I will, I said. I will go wherever the story goes.
So, a few things with that. First, the part about the media baron is true. Her father was British media mogul Robert Maxwell. Second, there was more to the audio, quite a bit more, about the Bill Clinton stuff. But third, that's actually an argument I hear extremely often now. One of the standard deflections, it seems, is that if Trump is guilty, so is Bill Clinton. So why aren't we focusing on Clinton? The simple answer is because Clinton isn't in the White House covering this all up right now, obviously. But the more charitable answer is that people do in fact care about that connection. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone who understands even a fraction of the Epstein stuff, or situation generally speaking, who isn't openly on board with Bill Clinton and all other associated parties being heavily scrutinized for their involvement. If you want to verify that, just ask people about how the House Committee on Oversight and Governmental Reform just subpoenaed the Clintons, as well as a bunch of other former government officials as well on top of that, and see how people feel about it. I don't think you'll find many out there disagreeing with the fact that anyone implicated by heavy association or close friendship with Epstein should be investigated, except Donald Trump and his supporters. To clarify, in an interview with Newsmax, when asked about whether or not he would release transcripts from the meetings held with Ghislaine Maxwell, Trump said, quote, "We don't want people to get hurt that shouldn't be hurt, and I would assume that that was why he was there. I want to release everything. I just don't want people to get hurt," end quote, which is in relatively close alignment with previous statements he's made about how everything is a Democrat hoax, where names were planted and innocent people could get hurt, which is a whole lot of bluster coming from someone whose name has been redacted all over the Epstein files. The point I'm trying to make is this: the lies never stop. Perhaps Ira Rosen is lying to make his book a little bit more salacious. Perhaps Maxwell is lying, was lying back then or right now because she has every single conceivable incentive to do so, and she's done it before. Perhaps Trump is lying, or Attorney General Pam Bondi, or FBI Director Kash Patel, or Deputy Director Dan Bongino, and the list goes on. To be honest here, let's not kid ourselves. Trump is definitely lying. That's basically all he does. But at the end of the day, pretty much everyone embroiled in the scandal has lied multiple times. Too many versions of the story have already been told, with too many conflicting elements. It's not physically possible for these people to be telling the truth anymore because no version of what they say can remain consistent across even a few days. From podcasters to social media, all the way to government officials, the story keeps changing because the interpretation of the evidence is even up in the air, and those with a vested interest in concealing the truth are hell-bent on doing so. One final example for the sake of showcasing how murky the entire situation has become. Another thing that you'll often see circulating when looking at the Epstein situation is this document right here, which was released by the FBI as part of a FOIA request. This document, which is a closure of forfeiture memo, way down at the bottom, after lengthy redactions and deletions, says, quote, "Epstein has also provided information to the FBI as agreed upon. Case agent advised that no federal prosecution will occur in this matter as long as Epstein continues to uphold his agreement with the state of Florida," end quote. Dig into the situation long enough, generally, and you will see this document circulated as proof that Epstein was an asset of the FBI and the US government. But this document doesn't really tell us that. In some capacity, he gave information as part of his plea deal in the early 2000s, but we don't know how much, and the direct statement itself concludes that his ongoing cooperation is with the state of Florida, not the FBI. If you combine this with a prior statement by Alex Acosta, the official that gave him the sweetheart plea deal in the first place, that Epstein was part of intelligence and should thus be left alone, it certainly paints a very compelling circumstantial picture. But the truth is that we don't know. He could have been an asset for any number of clandestine agencies all over the world, but the evidence is hard to interpret, and the simple fact that such evidence is so difficult to understand or piece together is what the guilty parties are now relying on. Maxwell is positioning for a pardon. Trump appears to be set on giving her one, or at least making her prison sentence as comfortable as possible, which basically has already happened. And the administration surrounding him is dead set on, preserving their political careers? They were appointed by him, practically all of them, a lot of them dragged out of insignificant places in order to be there. So it's kind of hard to tell, but at the end of the day, I can say this: the lies never stop coming. Stay frosty. Make up your own minds wherever possible, and obviously, as per every single video now, question everything. That's it. If you want support, there's links down below. Special VPN deal. There's a lot of reasons lately to start using one of those. Locals and Patreon, monthly memberships, and more, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.